Most of Week 8 is in the books, and it started back on Thursday night with the game between the Vikings and Chargers. The Chargers beat the Vikings with a score of 37-10, and sometimes there's games where the score gets out of hand due to a muffed punt or a miscommunication, but no, this game was exactly what the score looked like. The Chargers humiliated the Vikings in Week 8, and it was never close. Justin Herbert threw for 3 touchdowns, and the Chargers ran for over 200 yards as a team, and Oronde Gadsden had 77 yards midway through the second quarter, and that's what he finished with, but I truly believe he could have had a 150-yard, 2-touchdown game. If there is any big takeaway for the Chargers, I think Gadsden is their guy at tight end moving forward, and they have a favorable schedule in the next few games, and beware of sleeping on the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, with the Vikings, this is a train wreck of a season. There will be more content on the Vikings later this week, but there was very little that went right for this team in this game. Carson Wentz stayed in the game a lot longer than he should have. The Vikings were outplayed in every facet of the game, and this was an absolute nightmare from start to finish. And believe it or not, the Vikings opted not to practice before this game. And for clarity, meaning they did not practice at all between the Eagles game in Week 7 and the Chargers game in Week 8. They instead opted for a few walkthroughs, and it showed. And this was a truly embarrassing performance. The Vikings have an insanely difficult schedule coming up, and their season in a lot of ways is over. The Texans beat the 49ers 26-15 to improve to 3-4, and I would personally say heading into this game for Houston that this was a must-win game. If they fell to 2-5, that would have been a death sentence for their season. But they played Denver, Jacksonville, and Tennessee in their next 3 games, and anything can happen. This was also a great game to see from the 2025 Texans rookie class, as Woody Marks, Jalen Noel, and Jaden Higgins all made big plays in this game, and this was especially big, not just from a rookie development standpoint, but they stepped up with Nico Collins out. And this was the type of game Texans fans know they can put up, yet outside of the Ravens game, we haven't seen. And you can only play who's in front of you, injured or not, and this was a huge win for the Texans. For the 49ers, Christian McCaffrey ran the ball 8 times in this game, and there was a graphic that popped up on the screen during this game that said the 49ers had over 2,000 games missed due to injuries since 2017, which is the most in the NFL. And unfortunately, that's been the story of the 49ers this year, and unfortunately in a lot of other years too. Mac Jones wasn't great in this game, and the play calling was also frustrating at times too, but there's also the point that we just made, that you can only do so much when you're injured. And while the 49ers are not done at 5-3 in terms of them making the playoffs, I think their season in a lot of ways is over. The Patriots defeated the Browns 32-13, and there was a point in this game where I didn't think the Patriots were going to lose, but I thought the Browns were going to muck it up and, again, still lose, but have the final score be something like 17-14 or 20-13, and you get the point. But after putting up just 9 points in the first half, the Patriots' offense settled in, and like every game since December 2nd of last year, minus last week against the Dolphins, if you get to 20 points against Cleveland, you win. And New England improved to 6-2 and won their 5th straight game after starting out 1-2, and I tweeted out before the season started that I wouldn't be surprised at all if this team starts 6-2, and we're here. The Patriots' future is bright. Drake May looked great in the second half, and Stephon Diggs scored his first touchdown as a Patriot. For the absolute dog days of 2023, this type of game and this 5-game span was worth the wait. Now with Cleveland, there's not a lot to say that already hasn't been said. This is a bad team, and if there is any big takeaway, you obviously traded Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco, and if this game proved anything, Dylan Gabriel is not the guy. I mean, clearly. I know there's a lot of noise around this, but I would like to see Shedeur Sanders start at some point this year. Also, a huge shout out to Myles Garrett, because when you get beat by 19 points, this will get buried, but Myles had 5 sacks in this game and did everything he could to help this team get a win. Also, Carson Schlesinger had an insane interception, but per usual, the Browns did not have enough offensively. The Buffalo Bills went to Charlotte off their Week 7 bye to play the Panthers, and for anyone who may not remember, they had lost 2 games heading into their bye as they lost to the Patriots on Sunday night in Week 5 and to the Falcons in Week 6 on Monday night. And unfortunately, the Panthers took the receiving end of their frustration over the past few weeks as Buffalo defeated the Panthers 40-9. James Cook ran for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and this was a very stress-free win for the Bills Mafia as they outgained Carolina by over 150 yards and also won the turnover battle 3-0. And this was a good get-right game for Buffalo as they play the Kansas City Chiefs in what will be one of the most highly anticipated regular season games of the year next week. Now, with the Panthers, this was the type of game I feared when expectations rose. They entered the game 4-3, and I know Bryce Young was out, and we certainly acknowledge that, but I don't think the Panthers are ready to take a step and go against true contenders when it matters. And I also didn't like the game plan from Dave Canales in this game, as I thought they should have stuck to the run more, meaning before it got out of hand, and this was a very humiliating loss. There were also multiple Panthers offensive linemen injured in this game, and pretty much anything that could have went wrong unfortunately went wrong for Carolina. And I don't think it's going to get better, at least from a record standpoint, as they play at Green Bay next week. And there's no real takeaway for Carolina other than how brutal of a game this was. The Baltimore Ravens came out of their Week 7 bye and beat the Bears 30-16, and this game was why I personally never gave up on the Ravens, even despite them being 1-5. This was a huge win for the Ravens because there's only been one team in NFL history to make the playoffs that started 1-6, and that was the 1970 Cincinnati Bengals, who were shut out 17-0 in their lone playoff game. And why this win for Baltimore was so big, aside from a confidence standpoint, was because of their upcoming schedule. They play Miami on Thursday night, and admittedly that game looks a bit different now than it did before, but then they play Minnesota, Cleveland, and the New York Jets, and the path for them to being 6-5 is there. Derrick Henry scored 2 touchdowns, and Snoop Huntley was the point guard of the offense, and I think there is a very real possibility the Ravens make the playoffs despite being 2-5. With the Bears, yes, they were 4-2 entering the game, but this was a team that had forced 15 turnovers in the last 4 games, and obviously that's not sustainable. Not only that, but Caleb Williams has to play better too. The interception he threw was horrible timing, and the Bears also committed 11 penalties. I generally like the idea of this team in the long run and where they're headed, but the Ravens outcoached the Bears in this game, and they outplayed them too. And again, you have to credit the Bears defense for making plays the way they did over the last few weeks, but when you run into a team that did a good job of taking care of the football the way the Ravens did in Week 8, you have to have answers, and the Bears didn't. And there's no doubt this was a very frustrating loss. The Eagles defeated the Giants 38-20, and if you think the Eagles recap is going to start with me discussing Jalen Hurts and him throwing 7 touchdowns over the last 2 games, you're wrong. The refs are what helped the Eagles win this game. Not the fact they put up 38 points, or the fact they had over 425 yards of offense, or the fact they had 2 100-yard rushers in this game. It was the refs. Now, jokes aside, because I know Birds fans love jokes about their team and their performance, this was a great offensive performance for the second consecutive week for Jalen Hurts and the Birds. The Eagles had a lot of questions to answer after the Thursday night game against the Giants a few weeks ago, and they more than answered them in the following 2 games, and they look good heading into their bye at 6-2. And good for Jalen Hurts and good for the Birds, and I can't wait to see this team play the Packers and Lions off of their Week 9 bye. With the Giants, we have to start with wishing Cam Scatterbo the best in his recovery, as that was a brutal injury, and we of course wish everyone else who was unfortunately hurt in Week 8 the best too. This loss was really bad for the Giants, not just because of how the Eagles offense looked, but what it represented. Not having Cam Scatterbo and Malik Neighbors in your first round picks rookie year is both extremely frustrating and sad, because you want to see these guys develop in a rebuilding year with your rookie quarterback, and also selfishly you want to see them grow together as a fan. My takeaway from the Giants from this game is throw the stat line out. Jackson Dart looked good, and he's very fun to watch, and I really like what the Giants have in their young quarterback. The Jets. Yes, the New York Jets went into the jungle and defeated the Bengals 39-38 with no Garrett Wilson and no Sauce Gardner. And heading into this game, especially with the fact Aaron Glenn didn't announce who was going to be the starter for as long as he could, I thought this was going to be a brutal game for the Jets. Since he was coming off a mini bye and we didn't find out Justin Fields was starting until it was announced Tyrod Taylor was out. But Breece Hall ran for over 130 yards and 2 touchdowns, and this was the type of game that I thought the Jets could play in 2025, and why I like the hire of Aaron Glenn. Never back down and continuously try and establish the run and be a pest, if you will, and go from there. And I couldn't be happier for Jets fans to get the win, and this was also the most points the Jets scored in a game since Week 5 of 2022. And with the tragedy that was announced the morning of the game, this was a really cool win for the Jets, and rest in peace Nick Mangold. With the Bengals, you scored 38 points at home and lost to the Jets without 2 of their best players. I would argue that alone is a fireable offense. It's not a coincidence Lou Anarumo's defense last year struggled the way they did, and it's because the Bengals defense is horrible, and this was a backbreaking loss not just because it was the Jets, but because in a lot of ways it killed the season. With Joe Burrow out, you couldn't afford afford to trip up in a game like this. And I didn't think the Bengals were going to win the Super Bowl regardless, but even in the slim chance, this team isn't good enough to win 3 straight road playoff games with this defense. And again, you just lost to the Jets at home with no Garrett Wilson and no Sauce Gardner. Embarrassing does not do it justice. And speaking of embarrassing not doing it justice, the Dolphins absolutely pummeled the Falcons 34-10 in Week 8 in a game where Tua Tagovailoa, and major credit where it's due because I've bashed Tua a lot this year, so I absolutely want to give him his flowers, but in a game where he threw 4 touchdowns and led the Dolphins to an improbable victory as touchdown underdogs on the road. This was after a game in Week 7 where Tua threw 3 interceptions, the team was 1 for 13 on third downs, and they had over 70 yards and penalties 2 minutes into the third quarter. The NFL this year has truly been an any given Sunday type season, not just with a team or two, but all around, and the Dolphins have been going through it all year. No takeaways for Miami in the sense of what's going to happen moving forward, but enjoy Victory Monday and enjoy your quarterback throwing 4 touchdowns. With Atlanta, I think it's worth having a conversation of what is the long-term vision with this coaching staff. The pistol offense is extremely frustrating from Zach Robinson, and I know Michael Penix and Drake London were out, but this team didn't score a touchdown until there were 5 minutes left in the game. This team has put up 20 total points in the last 2 games, and they play the Patriots and Colts in each of the next 2 weeks. I know we've said it's any given Sunday, but I trust their coaching staff, meaning New England's and Indy's, a lot more than I trust Atlanta's, and I'd be surprised if they're not 3-6 through 9 games. This was an embarrassing performance. The Bucs beat the Saints 23-3 in Week 8, and the best way to summarize this game was a winning team taking advantage of a rebuilding team's mistakes. This was not a good game offensively for the Bucs, as they had just over 200 yards of offense for the entire game, and Tampa had just 2 drives over 20 yards. One of those drives was a 17-play, 91-yard drive that resulted in a turnover on downs that took over 10 minutes of gameplay, only for Spencer Rattler to throw a 3-yard pick 6 on the second play of the Saints' next drive. The Bucs defense forced 4 turnovers in this game, and I know Baker Mayfield is having a great year, but not every game is going to be an MVP game, and all that matters is Tampa improved to 6-2 heading into their Week 9 bye. With New Orleans, their defense played well enough to win this game, truly, but Spencer Rattler did not play well in this game, and unfortunately for Rattler was benched for second-round rookie Tyler Shuck. The main thing that's going to be discussed from this game for New Orleans is Spencer Rattler being benched for Shuck, as the Saints do not have postseason aspirations, but my takeaway from this game with New Orleans is if you are making this move, unless Tyler Shuck has multiple 3 or 4 interception games and has something insane like a 1-12 or 1-15 TD to INT ratio at some point this year, which I don't think he will, then I truly believe Shuck has to be the guy for the remainder of the year. Obviously, the supporting cast isn't great, but you drafted him with a top 40 pick, and you have to see what you have in your second-round rookie quarterback. The Colts beat the Titans 38-14, and Daniel Jones threw 3 touchdowns, and Jonathan Taylor ran for 2 more. And Jonathan Taylor finished the day with 174 total yards and 3 total touchdowns, and my takeaway for the Colts at this point is Jonathan Taylor needs to be in MVP conversations, and not discussing quarterbacks and toss in a, oh yeah, and Jonathan Taylor. No, like legitimately in MVP conversations. This is a truly insane season from Jonathan Taylor, and he now has over 1,000 total yards on the year, as well as 14 total touchdowns. And given how bad the Titans have been in all of 2025, I did say that if they upset the Colts in this game, I truly thought it would have been one of the biggest upsets this decade, and Indy took care of business, and they also had 38 points on just 52 total plays. And right now, this offense is a well-oiled machine. Some would say a Lucas-oiled machine. For the Titans, I don't really have anything positive to say other than when the game ended. And with the Titans, it's not bad enough to be a bad team. It's incredibly frustrating because they don't really try to win games. There was a point in this game where they had 4th and 3 from the Colts 42, and they punted the ball through the end zone for a touchback. And I hate to be so critical of the Titans because the fans truly deserve better, but the jokes write themselves. To make matters even worse, immediately after that punt, Jonathan Taylor took it 80 yards to the house. And unfortunately, this is a rare situation where there's next to nothing positive to say. This is a bad team, and there's a reason they may have back-to-back number 1 overall picks. To Denver, where the Broncos defeated the Cowboys 44-24 in a game where Bo Nix had 4 passing touchdowns and rookie running back RJ Harvey had 2 rushing touchdowns. The Broncos had over 400 yards of offense, and after a few games where the offense looked questionable, the Broncos quietly have 77 total points in their last 2 games. and if you want to be more specific, 77 points in their last 5 quarters. And within the Giants game in Week 7, there was a lot of people questioning Sean Payton as a play caller and how he was going to limit the team, and for Broncos fans and of course the team, it's really nice to see the offense rebound the way they have since the start of the 4th quarter against the Giants. Bo Nix looked really good in this game against Dallas, and especially the one deep pass down the sideline, and this was a win fan bases dream about. With Dallas, this type of loss summarizes the 2025 season. It seems like the offense is almost always fighting an uphill battle, and if they don't score, then they're at an extreme disadvantage. And the Cowboys were already down in this game, but Dak threw a 4th quarter interception, and that took all the wind out of the sails. And keep in mind, Denver had 37 points with 13 minutes left in the 4th quarter. What's really frustrating is this team gives everything they have under Brian Schottenheimer, but as we see almost every week, the defense isn't there, and it's a shame they traded Micah Parsons because I truly believe there would be a much different conversation around this team if they had a legitimate pass rush. Jerry, go trade for Max Crosby. But I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe as we're closing in on 220,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.